Okay, perfect. Thank you. So our list of subscribers, again, being that view of all of our lists. So how does that relate now back onto our subscribers? Like I said, subscriber key relating back on a one-to-many relationship. So we can look back and find which lists our subscriber is part of. Additionally, if you want to find out what subscribers have unsubscribed, well, we do have our unsubscribe table here, which again does relate back on subscriber key to subscriber key, but also on our list ID back to our list ID. So we know also what list they unsubscribed from. So you can see here from this diagram, it does create this very visual representation of how these data views all interrelate. Now, back to that sent example I gave earlier. Down here, you'll find some of our send information. Now, an email inside Marketing Cloud, when you do press send, it's known as a send job, and that job contains batches. So for example, our job of sends here, we have, of course, our information about the email that was sent, the email's ID, the account number that was sent, the from name and email address that we sent that email from, as well as the email's name in Content Builder and the email subject line. So some really good stuff in here as well for reporting. But all this information is just the top level information of that email when we press send. When we do press send, let's say to a data extension of 100 subscribers, there will be one row in our job data view and 100 rows in our sent data view, because there were 100 subscribers who were sent that job. And you can see that relationship for ourselves because our sent table here relates back on our job ID, back to job ID here. We can see that our subscriber key relates on subscriber key back to our all subscribers table here, but also the list that we sent to. You may have noticed when you press send in Marketing Cloud, you can choose what list you send to, a publication list or a normal list. If you choose all subscribers, of course, that is actually a list. So we'll choose the all subscribers list ID, or if you choose a publication list, you'll use that list ID as well. Now, once that email's been sent, of course, we then want to see who opens it. Now, a good open rate's about 20 to 30%. So let's say that 30 of those 100 sent subscribers opened the email. Well, you're going to have at least 30 records here in open. Now, the cool thing is that the open pixel that exists inside of the template of your Marketing Cloud emails will actually re-render every time someone reopens that email. So you will find that even though only 30 unique subscribers may have opened your email, you may have 50, 60, or 70 open rows, because a subscriber may have reopened that email on their device multiple times. And so you would get an open event date every time they reopen that email. So if you're trying to find when they first opened the email, you may have to start with the unique field or find the earliest event date, the earliest date to which that email was opened. It also means you can find out customers who do go back and reopen emails. So a great use case for this is you want to find out what emails people are opening a lot. Now, there are some brands that way send out things like when you purchase an item and they send you some warranty information or send you some how-to information. I know when I bought a car seat, I would have loved an email that shows me how to install the car seat. I didn't want to have to read the book. I'd rather see a YouTube video. So I'd rather someone have sent me an email which said, hey, here's some information on how to install this car seat. And I would have gone back and reopened that email every time I had to uninstall and reinstall the car seat. So you would have seen my data occur every time I reopened that email. I would have a whole new entry into the open data view. Now, the same thing happens to click, of course. When your subscribers do open the email, they click on a link. Every single time a link is clicked, a new row is inserted to the click table. And again, it's all tracked back, that job ID back to jobs, the list ID back to list, the subscriber key back to subscribers. You see where I'm going here. So it all connects in together. It's definitely worth exploring the data that exists in each of these views. There is a whole lot of information that you'll see inside these tables that doesn't exactly get shown in the usual tracking reports within Marketing Cloud. That includes Journey Builder, the Marketing Cloud Intelligence, and also the Email Studio reporting. Some of these fields just don't get shown. You do see summaries. So for example, in the Email Studio, when you go into the click tracking report, you see the email's performance and it will tell you how many clicks in total and how many unique clicks. That's a great summary. You can then click, of course, on that little number and in the report, and you can see how many users there were who uniquely clicked on the email. But then that's a list that you have to download as a CSV, and then you have to re-import it into Marketing Cloud, and that's a bit cumbersome. So instead, you could just query the click table, looking for the job ID, which you have to find out from the email send that you did, the list that you send to, returning back those subscriber keys. So again, some great use information as well. But my new favorites are the journeys and the automation ones. Like I said earlier, we now have these two brand new data views for automations, the automation instance and activity instance, the instance, of course, being the automation itself, and the activity instance being the activities within the automation. Now, the journey and journey activity are two more data views, journey being, of course, the journey itself, and the journey activity being an activity within the journey. Now, again, bear in mind that these links I've created on this diagram do allow you to see how each of these tables relate. So a great example, which I actually covered recently in one of my videos, was how do I find out users who were sent an email in Journey Builder and then maybe interacted with it somehow? Well, the best part is if you know the journey, because you know the journey's name, you can search for that journey name. And you can link the journey version ID back to the journey activity version ID. In this journey activity table, you can use the journey activity object ID to relate to a jobs triggered send definition object ID. This is the job table. Oops, sorry, one more up, one more over, the job table here. So on our job, the activity object ID relates to the triggered send definition object ID. And from here, we now have the job ID, which allows us to then see who was sent the email, who opened, and who clicked. So from a journey, we can find every email in the journey. From every email, you can find every job. From every job, you can find every send, every open, and off we go. You can make some really interesting data sets because you can now connect these tables together. Now, again, it's more than just the email studio as well. If I scroll over to the left-hand side of this diagram, you'll see a few of the mobile ones. Now, fair warning, some of these mobile ones are not officially supported or documented. They do exist in the back of Marketing Cloud, and you can find them out for yourself. Through that experience from a couple of years ago, I managed to write some of these ones down and expose them so we can see how they all interrelate. Now, I haven't spent too much time. There's a few unconnected data views here. Let's reconnect. There it is. There's a few unconnected ones because I have not spent too much time on the mobile side of the platform to connect these up, but you can see there is in fact some relationships between a mobile subscriber, that is a mobile address, and how they connect up into the SMS send logs and subscription logs and message tracking, these being the most common and most useful of your mobile data views. Mobile address being as close as you can get to a subscribers table for Mobile Connect. The send log, of course, being a log and tracking being the tracking for those SMS sends. The subscription log showing you exactly what keywords your mobile subscribers are subscribed to, which of course will link back into the subscription mobile table here as well. So again, useful stuff. I'm not going to lament too much on this because you can go research these for yourself. The ones that are not documented, again, they're not officially supported. You will find some documentation across the internet as other users have over the years found these data views and used them. But again, your use case will dictate how you go forth and use these tables. The key here being, it's hard to solution for things unless you know what exists. So hopefully through this diagram here, you can see there are a lot of data views and a lot of really cool data that you can relate to. Before I move on, I'm going to show you one last piece. And if I scroll up here, for those of you who are using the Marketing Cloud Connector and have access to a Salesforce org, you will also note that there are some very common tables that are brought in from your Salesforce org into Marketing Cloud, those being your contacts, your leads, and your users. Now, these are the three main objects that Marketing Cloud considers to be humans. Humans being contacts and therefore contactable for marketing purposes. Other tables will have different relationships, but these ones will always create a contact when they are loaded into Marketing Cloud. So for that reason, I have included these three data views or these three tables. There's of course a lot more fields to these when you load them in through the Salesforce connector, but I have connected up their contact key and ID just for visual purposes so you can see how they relate back to a contact. So with that in mind, if you do want a more purist view of how the data views exist, I have got in my links here the light version of this diagram, and this is the documentation correct version of data views. So you'll see it's missing a few data views here, but it does show how it's meant to look as a pure form with none of my additional fabricated tables included. So again, those two links, I've got the one link already in the chat of today's meeting. I'll put the second one into the chat there as well. You can also find some documentation on this if you Google it. These are the Marketing Cloud data views, and you will find this link on my blog and my YouTube channel. Now, moving on, I've not put too much information around the actual data and functions behind these data views. I've made these diagrams as a navigatable and interactable data view. The goal here was to make it easy to understand how to get to data. If I want to find out which subscribers clicked on a thing, I can now see my clicks and see if they link back through job into my subscribers. That was the goal of this table. But as you go forth and start to architect solutions and include your data views, you may want some information. And I can definitely recommend no one better than to go with Matthias's blog on his system data views in Marketing Cloud. I'll put his link into the description here as well, but he's also got fantastic SEO. So if you do search up your Salesforce Marketing Cloud data views, you will find his blog just at the very, very top of Google. He has got some fantastic documentation on how these data views work, and not just about the view themselves, not just the data views at the top level, but he also includes some great examples, use cases, and he also dives deeper and talks about some of the individual, for example, pick list values, here we go, within some of those statuses. So for example, this status field, which you have access to inside of our subscriber view, has multiple options behind it. He has gone ahead and actually documented what those options are. So again, he's gone above and beyond when documentation is at stake here. And you definitely want to be referencing his blog when it comes to researching how to use these data views and how they are structured, but also some of these known behind the scenes examples, behind the scenes data points. So again, his link is in the chat. Definitely worth checking these ones out. So that in mind, why are these data views again important? So we do have access to a few ways to get data out of Marketing Cloud, and I'm sure a few of you have probably already explored these. And when it comes to getting data out, there's nothing more you can do really than exporting data from Marketing Cloud using the extract function. Now you can use the tracking extract function. I've done a video on this one previously as well, where you can extract things like your sends, your opens, your clicks, your not sents, and so many other points of data. The problem is that to then use that data back in Marketing Cloud, you do have to extract the data, unzip the data, then import the data, and then you can use it. Now that may need to be done for some use cases, but for most use cases, you shouldn't need to go through such a process. You can usually just use a data view to solve it for you. Again, I have done a video on tracking extract and re-import process, so you can do that for yourself. It's on my YouTube channel. But in the meantime, the most common use case is going to be just using data views to get that data for you. Now, a few examples that I see most commonly when it comes to the utilization of data views is things like retargeting and remaking things like measures. I talked through a quick one earlier, but I'll go through it again. I may have had an email in the past that I'd sent. It may have come from a journey, for example. So I'll scroll down here to my journeys. And that journey email may have been in a series or a campaign of emails that I want to retarget. All my customers who opened this campaign series, I sent 3 emails through Message Studio, and I sent 2 different journeys with a few emails in each. I want to get all those emails together. Now, to do that using a measure or a data filter would be almost impossible. That would take a lot of time and a lot of effort. But by using our data views, I could make a very simple SQL statement in Automation Studio where I could say, get me the journeys named this or this. I want to get these 2 journeys. I want to get all of the emails across all the versions of those 2 journeys. So give me all those activities. Then give me all the jobs of all those sends that were conducted. Obviously from the job, give me the sends. And from the sends, get me the opens, as well as the jobs that I sent through Email Studio, and union those together. By making that data set, you can, in one simple query these data views and construct yourself your very own retargeting data extension. The best part is, because it all can be done with SQL, you can then apply that to an automation and have that rerun every day to add new subscribers to that list. So as a use case, it now can exceed the power of a measure straight away. You'd have to build multiple measures to do this individually, but by using a data view and some neat SQL, you can build yourself your very own retargeting set very, very quickly. Another example that I'm actually particularly fond of is the use of creating your very own retargeting engagement score. Now, again, every customer is different, every brand is different, every business need is different, and everyone's definition of engaged is also different. I'm a huge fan of the Einstein engagement scores and the frequency scores. It's a great measure. It's a great way to look at your subscribers and how they're engaging with your brand. The idea that someone can be engaged or disengaged, they can be a window shopper or a lapsing customer, I think is a very great visual representation of what is in Marketing Cloud and how they're engaging with you. But for some brands, the idea of fast-moving consumer goods where you're buying clothes or buying groceries every week is very different to someone who buys a car once every 3 to 5 years. So the idea of engagement can change drastically between different customers. Again, someone who buys milk and bread from the grocery store versus a car once every 3 to 5 years, very different email campaigns, very different kinds of engagement. And so sometimes you may need your very own form of engagement, your very own way of calculating and measuring engagement. So to do this, one of the ways I do see customers do this is they use things like the Einstein MC predictive scores table. Again, this is a data extension you can see inside of your main data extension folder, and they will link this up with their existing sends, opens, and clicks. Now, what I mean by this is, if you know that your subscribers, you consider an engaged customer not just to be what Einstein says is their likeliness or their engagement score, but perhaps you say, well, you know what? I think someone who has clicked at least 25% of the emails that we've sent, 25% of the emails we've sent in the last 6 months, that's an engaged customer. If they have not clicked at least 25% of the emails I've sent them in the last 6 months, I will consider them disengaged and should probably receive more engaging content. Well, I could write a very simple query for that. We could say for every subscriber, join up against the sent table and count how many times they've been sent emails. For some subscribers, that could be only 5 emails in the last 6 months. But for others who are subscribing to all your preferences and want to get all your different content types, they may have received 50 emails in the last 6 months. So again, very different volume amounts. You can then do the same thing, can join up against the click table and say, well, okay, I've now got for every subscriber, I know how many emails they were sent. Now I want to know how many times they clicked, but not just how many times they clicked, because they could re-click the same link multiple times, and that doesn't count. So only select the clicks where the is unique field here is equal to true. That is, only count unique clicks in the email. If they clicked multiple links, that counts, but not the same link multiple times. And all of a sudden, I've now got the subscriber, the count of emails, and the count of unique clicks. And quite simply, if I divide the number of sends by the number of unique clicks, the other way around, then I'll have a percentage of their engagement. And anyone who's got a percentage above 0.25 or 25% engagement, I can consider engaged. I should send them one type of communication. But if your engagement is below that, then I'm going to send you something different. So you can very quickly and easily fabricate your very own re-engagement calculations just using 1, 2, 3 data views and a very simple SQL query. So again, some very powerful and very simple use cases to go through. Now with that, I did want to stop on the showcase of what data views are and how they work early, because I really wanted to hear from the community as to some of the examples or some of the questions you have about data views. The reason that they are a big passion point of mine and why I agreed to have a chat today with you all is because I do truly believe that the data within Marketing Cloud is a very, very powerful asset that so few users truly utilize. The user interface is great. It gives you some great information, but the data is where the party's at. There is so much cool stuff stored in these tables. And once you start to poke around and have a look, and again, through this diagram here today, just see how much data there truly is, you can begin to think about how you can use that data to your advantage. Again, I mentioned a few examples today, the ability to find journeys and sends and people who clicked on those emails and those journeys, or to even recreate your own engagement score system based on your business's idea of engaged or not engaged. These things are not easy to do in the user interface, but through these data views, they're quite simple. So with that, I do want to take a second now to have a conversation and have a bit of a FAQ or any examples that you have that I can start to answer for you. In the meantime, if you do want to hear more about data views, I have spent some more time on this topic. I've got 2 videos to start you off. One is the introduction to data views inside Marketing Cloud. It's pretty much a summary of what I've covered here today in a nice little 7-minute chunk. So I'll put that one into the chat there as well. One of the big examples I do carry on a lot about is also the recreation of measures using SQL. If anyone here who has used measures, they're a fantastically easy drag and drop way to re-engage and retarget based on activity that's occurred in your instance. So for example, were they sent this email or not sent this email? Did they click this email? Have they clicked at least 1 email in the last 14 days? These very marketing-centric ways of communicating engagement are made really, really easy using measures. The problem is that measures use the filter methodology, and filters can notoriously be a little bit slow sometimes, particularly when you have huge amounts of subscribers or huge amounts of sends historically. So when measures kind of become non-performant for you, you may want to use SQL. And so I do have this video here, which does carry on for about 30 minutes. Sorry, I do talk quickly in the video, but there's a lot to cover. So you can check out this one here, which does go through a whole series of examples. I believe I do recreate the total unique opens last 30 days. I would also create the total marketing sends last 30 days. I've got emails not opened last 30 days. So some great use cases of where you might want to use these data views to recreate things you might normally do inside measures. Now with that, again, we do have some more time in this meeting, so I did want to open up the floor to any conversations or questions or use cases you may have as you've gone through and heard what you've heard today, or may have used data views in the past and just have some simple questions. So I will keep talking, but in the meantime, I please do encourage you to either throw your hand up with that little emoji. I know it's on the tray of your Zoom call. You can use the raise hand emoji. I believe it looks a little bit like that. You can raise your hand and you can jump on the mic and ask a question. Otherwise, if you don't want to jump on the mic, feel free to use the chat function. Have a chat and let me know what you think. So in the meantime, as you all type out any questions that you have, one of the things that I do love about the data views here as well is they're all stored in SQL. And so all these data types here are quite easy to use. Now do bear in mind that you'll see some common terms here, things like event date. The event date is related to the data view that it's in. So as you're writing out these SQL queries, a quick tip, make sure you're always remembering what table you're operating in when you reference the event date. For example, the event date for click will be the event time and date to which the click took place in the server time, which don't forget is in the American server time. So you may have to use a SQL function to then pivot that time around to your local time if you're trying to find users who clicked on a link before midnight or some other kind of campaign requirement. For the opens, of course, the event date is when that pixel was rendered for the open. Now, be aware of that when it comes to things like the Apple privacy thing, because it will pre-cache those images, including the open pixel, for users who are using that feature. So bear in mind that if you do see a spike of event date or open event dates, that could be users who are using the Apple Mail privacy. Otherwise, you can also look for users who reopen emails consistently, and you can also use that event time as their reopening time. I find it's a pretty cool metric to find out when you send someone a voucher, for example, for their birthday, and that email gets reopened a number of times. And you can see the number of times it's opened and also the gap between when they open that email, because you may find someone who goes back and reopens an email multiple times, obviously has an intent to use that voucher, just hasn't got a reason to use it just yet. So there's a great campaign idea. If you send out a voucher, you could then go back and query who has opened this email a couple of times, add them to a journey and say, hey, you clearly want to use this voucher. Let's give you a reason. Here's a further 10% off if you buy now. Do you have one question? So feel free to jump on the mic.
Hey, hi, Cam. This is a really great session. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge with our participants. So I have one question where, apart from Query Studio, do you recommend any other tools that our audience will go and then quickly write a query and then get the data views information?
Yeah, definitely. Query Studio is an okay one. I'm more of an SQL person myself, so I've not been using Query Studio as much. The methodology is great for all those who are learning SQL and trying to explore SQL, because it does help you by creating the table to put that data into very quickly for you. However, I do find that, especially when you're learning how to manipulate the data, it's actually easier to work with a more consistent interface, and for that's going to be the query part of Automation Studio. What I would recommend is, because the data types are reasonably well documented on the official documentation. So for example, on our subscriber views here, we can see that the data extension data type for subscriber ID is number, for the date undeliverable is date. I do capture those same values here, so number and date. And I carry those forward on the subscriber view here, number and date. I do believe that Matthias also has a very, very similar thing for his views: subscriber data view, fields, subscriber ID, number and date. So you will find the documentation is quite consistent across the board about how you can then build that data extension up. I've just realized that Matthias does not have the character lengths on his one, unfortunately, but you will find the character lengths documented on my table and on the original data view, I think. Yes, so nvarchar will have the text length for that field. So it's going to be a text 254 or an email 254 length field. I would recommend that you build the data extension yourself in Marketing Cloud and then populate it. It will take you a bit longer to get your hands into it, of course, because it won't be done for you, but it does give you that muscle memory of learning what the fields are and how they're built. The reason I recommend this is because the process of making a data extension is one that you have to get familiar with. Getting experience quickly building data extensions will save you time in the future in Marketing Cloud. It's a very laborious process to make a data extension over and over again. And so you learn very quickly to think ahead of what you are going to need. So if I'm going to be exploring some data views, I know that my campaign is going to be a campaign to retarget a journey email that I built 3 months ago. So I know I'm going to need subscriber key, which I can get from subscribers. I'll need email address from subscribers. I'll need their status from subscribers. I'll probably want to know the email version they were sent, which I'll get from the job. I need to know when they were sent it, which I'll get from sent. If they clicked it, which I'll get from click as a Boolean field. And you can start to think ahead, you plan ahead of the fields you'll want. It's a really good practice to get into. And so for that, again, Query Studio is great for beginners, just to learn how to start building those queries out. But once you've passed that learning phase, truly get in there and build your own data extensions, because it's a trial by fire. You will learn very quickly to think ahead on what fields you need. Again, the process of adding additional fields gets quite difficult after a while. So you'll learn to think ahead in the fields you want, so you can start to plan your own activities far in advance. Again, nothing but practice will get you that mentality. So I truly recommend go out there and practice doing that.
Hey,
Hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Cam. Yeah, definitely. I have one more question where, so if let's take an example. I have my customer who has 5 custom fields that he would love to embed into all the Sendlog. So is there any quick, simple method for everyone not to go with SQL, just to add all these custom attributes to our data views and then bring some KPIs out of which?
Yep. So the job, the Sendlog view, which is not really a data view, it's just the Sendlog. But I know what you're referring to. So yes, you can add those custom fields. And I do believe that as long as the data extension, or the data source, should I say, that you send from contains the exact matching fields in that Sendlog, then those values will be imported into the Sendlog upon send. It does not work retrospectively. However, you could fabricate that. If you have those values, you could, of course, augment your Sendlog, then go back in time and use an update script to then go through and back populate all that Sendlog data. You could do that. I'd probably not recommend it though, because there is a risk that through an update function, you may touch a subscriber record in the wrong way, and you may update some values incorrectly. And it's better to have a data set with nulls than a data set with incorrect values. I'll say that again to make sure everyone got it. Always, it is better to have a data set that contains nulls and null fields, or empty fields, or empty values, than to have a data set that possibly has erroneous values. An empty value is easy to get around. If it's empty, you can check for that. Is empty, then don't use it. But if there is a value there and it's erroneous, it's incorrect in some way, how are you going to know that? How is your AND script going to know that? How is your SQL going to know that? It's not. So if you ever have the chance, empty is better than wrong. So don't go back and backfill unless you're very sure what you're doing.
Yeah, that's true. Thanks, Cam. So one more question, Cam. Like, is there any way that I could get my data views more than 6 months of data of an engagement?
Good question. And again, please feel free to raise your hand as well. I'll be going through as the hands are raised. So any questions you got, make sure you queue them up. Also feel free to use the chat as well. Now, the 6-month look back is the default for your data views. Having said that, there are some newer data fields that are actually a different look back. I do believe the automation one is a different look back period. If memory serves, automations run through the last 31 days. So they're 1 month look back. So the answer is no. By default, these data views are set up for this reason. They are producing a lot of data. I mean, you think about the big companies who are using Marketing Cloud and just how many sends they are conducting. That's a lot of data. And there's no point to keep some of that data just sitting around doing nothing. If you have a practical use case to use this data, then you'll always be able to find a way to save it and reuse it later. Again, my example for a travel customer, the gap between holidays, especially large, expensive international holidays, won't be every 6 months. So to retarget a customer's activities from 6 months ago for their next purchase, it's not going to happen with data views. They're likely to buy a large holiday every 1, 2, or 3 years. So if you really need that click data, and again, I'll ask a more feasible question as well. Does a click that you did 2.5 years ago really impact your next possible click in Marketing Cloud? Probably not. Data that old rarely has an influence on things that you're doing today as a customer. Hell, things that I did a month ago in my inbox, I wouldn't say are good predictors for what I might do tomorrow in my inbox. So a 6-month look back is actually a huge amount of time. There are only very, very few reasons where you may need more than 6 months. And again, I use those things like those annual campaigns or promotions. And if you do want those, again, the idea is there. You can go back and you can reference those sending data views, the jobs, the sends, the opens, the clicks. And you can either extract those as your click tracking extracts or the data extracts, sorry. You can then re-import them into Marketing Cloud and save that data. Given if you're doing that, I'd probably recommend using a data retention policy on those data extensions to make sure you do drop out the data when it gets to 14 or 15 months old. There is no point keeping data around just for the sake of it. You do actually have a data limit in Marketing Cloud, so do not keep data around just because it's there. Make sure you are dropping data out that you're not going to use. But again, if you do have a use case to use a longer look back, you can invent your own solution by using those queries to just append information each time. You could do this as a weekly activity to look back 7 or 8 days and get those last 7 or 8 days worth of clicks and opens and sends and append them into your personal created data view. And that way you can fabricate that longer look back.
Yep, thanks, Cam. That's really, that's what we were looking for. We have one more question, Cam. So the question is, what about disseminating information?
Yeah, perfect. Is I'll get you just to elaborate on that one for me, if that's all right.
UV, can you elaborate more? Probably you can speak as well. Oh, his mic is off. Yeah, if you would like to elaborate some more details in the chat, so probably it would help Cam for answering your question. Okay, so let me unmute Cam. So just be 1 second. Yeah, I given a permission, so you can go and unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Yeah, we can.
Okay. What I mean by that is you've shown us a lot of interesting things, but at times we might want to send that information to stakeholders on a regular basis. So the output, what would you recommend using as a procedure to be able to send that information on a periodic basis to our stakeholders?
Cam, you're there?
Thank you for that. Yeah, sorry. You've got permissions locked, so I couldn't talk.
Oh, sorry. I'll give a co-host, yeah.
No, that's all right. I was trying to unmute myself and it wouldn't let me do it. So perfect. So I'll not mute myself again. Absolutely good question. So with your data views, when you do use an SQL activity to query a data view, it obviously has to go somewhere. And as I said earlier, I'd recommend that you actually make a data extension. Don't use the Query Studio to have it made for you. Build your own data extension. And that way, when you do your own query, you can have it going into that destination. Now, once you have that data in a data extension as a destination, you can, of course, use the Automation Studio's extract activity to export it for yourself. So I do have my Marketing Cloud open right now. So let's have a quick look for ourselves. I could make myself a brand new automation. And I could say that on my brand new automation, I'm going to go ahead and make a SQL activity to go and query some data views. Once I've queried that data view, I can then do a simple data extract and then done. With the data extract, it does go directly into your safe house. So if you do want to move it around, you could then use a file transfer activity to pick up that extract, which will be a CSV or a .txt file. And you can use a file transfer to throw that file either into another folder of your FTP, or you could also throw it into a separate FTP, S3, or Google data store as well. So if you are talking about getting that data out of your Marketing Cloud instance and into something else, for example, your data warehouse to run some reports on, you can use, like I've got here in my example, a query to select the data, the extract to extract the data from the data extension and save it as a CSV. And then you can use a file transfer to move that CSV from your Marketing Cloud FTP onto your on-prem FTP to then have your BI toolkit pick up that data. That is a very, very common workflow for customers who actually want to extract the engagement information from Marketing Cloud and plot it in their own BI tools. A good example of that, again, will be things like your sends, your opens, your clicks. So for a customer who has a very advanced business intelligence and data analytics team, again, for those customers who've not come from an area where they've had their own BI dashboards, they have a much more legacy approach to having data analytics and data science conducted on-prem. They may want to have all that data, all those sends, those opens, those clicks coming out of Marketing Cloud into their data warehouse so they can run their own data models to create their own engagement lists, their own retargeting lists. A very, very common use case, and again, that's the exact way to do it. Query the data views and whatever else you need and dump it into a data extension, extract the data extension, and then fire that data extension from your FTP onto the server. Alternatively, of course, if your data warehouse team can get the file from Marketing Cloud, you could, of course, drop that last step and just have the extract sitting there every day, ready to go. And they can schedule their service to go and get the file from the Marketing Cloud FTP with the correct credentials. Of course, it does depend. If you do want to make sure they are picking up that file every day on time, it may be easy to throw the file to them rather than have them get the file from you. Because if a failure occurs in your data, they may be getting the same file the next day because it's not been updated. So I'd recommend, if possible, using a file transfer to throw the file to them rather than having them get the file from you. Hope that answers your question. Feel free to use the chat. Big thumbs up, even better. Thank you so much. So I think we do have some microphone permission pieces. So again, please do use chat and jump in if you have any questions you'd like answered on this topic.
Yes, thank you, Cam. I think I'll ask if anyone has any questions. Anyone has any questions, team?
Again, great toolkit, the data views. Not as many platforms that are out there as I'd like would actually have data views. I know a lot of other large email sending platforms and Marketing Cloud platforms out there. They do give their users the data, but not in this level of detail, not in this immense level of detail can you get data out of other platforms. So we are very lucky to have such access in a platform like Marketing Cloud to get the raw data out. If you think of platforms that are much easier to use, more, I'm going to say marketing friendly, they never give you this kind of power, the power to jump right in and extract every single point of data. So it's incredibly valuable. It's a big point of difference that you have this totally unblocked access to all this engagement data. So truly spend some time, go through that documentation, again, just to see for yourself, read the introduction as to what each of these data views do. The click data view, what is it? How does it work? What are the values? It's a great way to understand what toolkits you have access to in Marketing Cloud. So go through and read it for yourself. And when you've done that, make sure you visit Matthias's blog and make sure you see for yourself, because again, he goes through in a lot more detail as to how these views work. And of course, he's even written some of this stuff for you. He has his own queries pre-written for you, ready to go. Just make sure that when you build your own data extensions, you do name them appropriately with the correct names. And that way they will go into those correct pieces for you. Once you've got that as well, you jump over to my diagram, you can see for yourself how they're all linked. So you do go ahead and write your join statements. You'll have all the information here that you want. And so, yes, there is some comments there around Data Cloud as well. So if you do want to link this information back into your Data Cloud, I'm going to assume you're referring to the formerly known CDP. Exactly right. So you can use the native connectors and integrations to pass that data back into your own platform. Thank you, Eves. Yep, exactly right. So you can use that connector for yourself to pump that data back into your CDP and use that as an attribute to then use for segmentation. You absolutely can do that. And in fact, it's a use case that, again, is a good one to use. For those who don't have Data Cloud, though, and you perhaps have your own on-prem or something separate, that's why I say using an extract function that's similar to this is how you may then get that data out for your on-prem teams. Teams that want to conduct their own segmentation or their own data analytics or science with their existing toolkits. I have heard of some customers who have data science teams who use R and Python and other languages to create some really advanced segments for their customers. Again, that's obviously an opportunity for them to use an advanced platform like Data Cloud. But in the meantime, they do have on-prem teams who use their on-prem tools, and this is how we get that data out. So again, I love the fact that there is no blockers in Marketing Cloud. You really can get the data as you need it and move it around as you need it. But great question.
Yep. Thanks, Cam. I think we don't have much questions on this. Thank you for your valuable time and then spending with us on the short time. And really apologies for being late for this event, which is occupied some other internal meetings. Again, thank you for joining with us today, and then really appreciate the effort that what you put here. Thank you.
No, my pleasure. And like I said, team, do reach out if you have questions. Again, I've got an absolute sweet spot for data views, so reach out. We have plenty of Slack communities and LinkedIn groups, and of course, Stack Exchange areas as well. So make sure you do reach out. I think there's one more question for you before we break things off.
Yes, I think he has a question to me. Yes, Yuvi. When can we get the recordings of the last 2 days? I think I already updated the recordings of the last 2 sessions in our channel, UV. Probably can go and then verify it. It's up to date. I could not see them. Okay, just give me 1 second. Prashant, can you hear me? I think we updated everything, UV. Can you share your screen if you don't mind so that I can check? I'll give it host access. Yeah, I did. Gaurav has messaged. Thank you. Thank you, Anita. Thanks, Cam. Thank you so much for being with us today. Really great session. Really love it. The way that you explained data views and everything. Looking forward for more sessions to talk on this event. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks again.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks everyone for joining with us. So let's join Saturday. Saturday, we have a great session on server-side JavaScript and Web Studio and all the stuff. We have Saturday, Sunday, great development sessions are going on. Thank you.